Alright guys, it's time to do some analysis for the live stream on Turn A Gundam. Gonna go through abilities, do all of that, so let's just go right at it. So starting off, it's important for us to talk about what kind of weapon Turn A Gundam has. Turn A Gundam has a projectile weapon. Its regular primary fire shots, while not scoped down, are not projectile, they're hit scan, meaning that they hit immediately when fired. However, the charge shot is actually a projectile, and it also has a lingering hitbox, which means that on top of the fact that it's already a projectile, it has a time period in which it can hit. It's not a single target, essentially a single dot of damage. It is a extended line that travels through, and so enemies can walk into it and stuff like that. We'll see if we can see any of that sort of damage. This character does do a lot of damage with its charge shot. A headshot with it does 600 damage. So you can get some quite solid damage going through. It's not the one shot of a GM Sniper 2 or anything like that, but it is still very, very consistent. And some of its strengths are that it does have the ability to peel itself from close range attackers like this. I would not necessarily suggest relying on using your grab as an aggressive tool, just because it is easy to dodge, and everybody in this game, every single player in this game has a lot of mobility options, at least one, which they likely will have. Like a better player here who knows he's here would dodge it. However, it is interesting to talk about that him using his grapple ability does give him some sort of a CC resistance, it looks like. From what I've noticed personally in my own gameplay watching is that if two Turn A Gundams attempt to grapple each other at the same time, the one that does it second will grapple the other one. So it looks like since there is this resistance to CC, it does make it so whichever one would be last would have it longer. Because he blocks this Marase's hook. So that's actually a really interesting usage of that you can block cooldowns with the grab. Because that's a long range stun too. So. But as I was saying, you don't want to be relying on using it too much. You'd rather just honestly hit your shots. In a situation like this, I talk about in my Turn A Gundam guide, which I'll link at the end of the video, that you want to play Turn A Gundam in situations where you'd like to play a GM Sniper 2, but it's not quite at the correct range. This character is still a mid to long range character, even though it has this grapple ability. In this sort of situation, I'd like to see it playing on the high ground if it has a way to access it. I'm not sure if you can. If not, then it gets a little tricky and it's questionable why you'd even want to be playing Turn A Gundam here in the first place. Like, yes, you do have the ability to grapple things that get close to you, but in a situation like this sort of a map where you're really tight in on this point, there's probably be something better to play. But regardless of that, honestly, the better situation would really just be positioning elsewhere. He's intentionally playing in the middle of a really tight choke, a really tight objective. I would rather have them be out towards probably somewhere near where the Ashimar is on the right side of the screen. It's really hard to see, but it's a really fine outline. But over past the Marseille on the right, there's an Ashimar. So being out there would be better just because you can actually be safer. You can apply damage from an off angle. You can potentially flank. But it's better in other sections of this map. This one is the worst point for it. So here we're about to see something that's really crazy just about how this ultimate works. It doesn't 100% show this, but not only does it do an obscene amount of damage, Moonlight Butterfly here, where you fly above the enemy and you just deal damage in like a line directly below you. This also works through buildings. So if these enemies here were hidden by a building, it would still hit them. It's very, very similar to Hanzo's dragon from Overwatch. This character is very, very similar to Hanzo, but in particular, its ultimate is like a dragon, but it's flying from underneath you as you fly above. So extremely, extremely powerful. As you can see, these enemies are there, and then they're just not. Granted, better enemies will be able to dodge better because it is hard to manipulate. You'd definitely want to be careful about where you're going from and how exposed you are in these situations, but it is extremely powerful regardless of that. You just want to make sure that when you're using it in a situation where you can catch enemies off guard, or they don't know where you are, or you're dropping it on top of an objective where enemies are bound to be, that sort of thing. All right, guys, we're also going to cover Dom Trooper a little bit today. We don't have that much gameplay because they did not show it very much, but let's get right into this. I'm also going to be doing a guide for it later on. It's not released yet, but there will be a full guide for Dom Trooper, so just think of this as like a little precursor to that. So, to talk about Dom Trooper a little bit, Dom Trooper has a couple different primary capabilities. Its most powerful capability is its armor gun. An armor gun that pops and gives 500 armor to a teammate, and I don't know for sure whether armor is any different from health, but at minimum it is better than health. It slowly decays over time, but it is an extremely powerful capability to give it to a teammate as they're engaging, like popping onto your Sazabi, onto your Exia as it's ulting, whatever it may be, or just popping it onto a teammate to keep them from dying. It does function just like HP otherwise, other than the fact that it decays over time. So that is its main thing. It has very powerful damage overall with projectile rockets that you have to learn how to hit your shots with. The character feels a little bit like a Quake character mixed with Zarya. They have, like I said, the rockets, and then they have a beam ability, which, as you'll see later on, doesn't actually do very much damage, but it's to finish off targets. And something that's a little bit of a forgotten portion of its kit, that is actually quite a good portion of its kit, is its mines. And they are useful to mark areas of the map where flankers would come from, or just to supply a little bit of extra damage. Mainly, though, it's for marking angles, putting them underneath your supports to help protect your supports and that sort of stuff. So, armor gun goes on into a main person. As you can see, he popped it onto his Sazabi. I'll show you more specifically in a second after you watch this clip. You can get an idea of what the damage is like for the rocket. This guy playing it is not actually hitting that many of the rockets, so he's not doing as much damage, but it still does a healthy amount of damage here. But here you'll see, so he hits I believe it's a Sazabi out there with the armor gun. As you can see, there's a healthy amount of armor right there, and then he gets tanked by a large amount of damage. Whereas before he would be really, really close to dying, now he is still in quite a healthy position. I believe he got tomahawked, and then probably hit with some primary fire damage. But that's basically what it does. Like I said, it's very, very similar to Zarya. Recently on Overwatch, there's been a meta composition where you bubble your monkey player, and your monkey jumps in and engages. It's like that with Sazabi. It's a very viable situation. You armor gun your Sazabi, have him engage, give him extra stopping power, extra survivability. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mixture of like a Zarya capability in addition to something like a Brigitte pack, because I don't believe it actually does anything to stop cooldowns. Here you're going to see a really interesting, intelligent gameplay overall, other than the fact that it gets a little bit too predictable with it. So something that is a common, a real inherently good aspect of guns that are high damage and have low shots per second, like like Turning Gundam's weapon, and with the opposite of it being something like Pale Rider's weapon, where you have to spend less time out in the open to deal your damage. So as you can see here, you can hide, turn and fire, come out and fire, and you can increase the time that you're damaging somebody with it. Whereas potentially in open space, if they hit all their shots and you hit all your shots, you're going to lose the battle. In a situation like this, where they can only hit their damage less frequently, just because of the fact that you're hiding from it and only firing when you have to, you can increase your damage drastically in comparison to your safety. You just have to be careful not to be too predictable, or you'll end up getting hooked like this. So maybe, just switching up when you engage, when you don't do that, or peek and then dash back in, something like that. As I mentioned earlier, the beam damage does not do that much damage. It's not a main source of damage. You don't want to think of it as a main source of damage. The enemy only takes about 400 or so damage from that, whereas if he just ends up hitting his rockets here, the rockets are doing drastically more than that. As you can see, one rocket that doesn't actually even hit the RX-78 does about 500 damage, I believe. It's very, very close proximity here. I think it was more like 300 damage, but still. As you can see, it is a very healthy amount of damage if you just hit your shots. The beam is to finish up damage and to finish off targets that are low. If you're looking for some more Turn A Gundam information, then make sure to check out this Turn A Gundam guide. I cover everything in it, including strengths and weaknesses, when to play, how to play, and all of the abilities. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll be putting out a Dom Trooper video too at some point, so make sure to stay tuned, and I will see you guys next time.